Oh, I can never get enough of that song. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Great Combos, where we always say, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find great combos. I'm Roger Caesar, and that gentleman over there.
Hi, Roger. I am Alexandre Matt, also known as the rowdy guy. Am I known as? I don't know. Today, I will be the rowdy guy. That's my title today. Roger, what are you?
I am the flexible guy in this case. And Alex, before we even get started, let's first of all welcome all of our loyal listeners who are here with us every single week. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we always appreciate it. Thank you for coming in and listening to another great convos. And Alex, you're not in your regular spot today. Where are you in this world of ours?
I am in the middle of Canada. I am currently in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm here for a special project with two other French-Canadian storytellers, one from Quebec, one from Manitoba. I'm the one from Ontario. We're developing something new that we will work on for the coming months, and we'll be able to announce something in the year to come. It's going to be a great project.
Awesome.
It's very cold in Winnipeg.
Yeah. What's the temperature right now?
Well, right now it says -11. When I arrived, and I went out of the airport doors. My colleague was there, and he said, "Welcome to Manitoba," as it was snowing and big wind was howling. He had warned us in advance, "Put your hat on before you leave the airport." So I was good to go. But man, it's still a shock.
I gotta say, Jackie here said, "Watch out, Roger. He'll catch you out if you don't watch your step." It's all good, Jackie. I love seeing what he's doing, and I'm glad that he's out there constantly showing his professionalism and what he can do in his experiences. So good on you, Alex. Listen, let's get into why we are here today. And the reality is that we as speakers, we have been in front of many crowds over the years. And today's conversation is all about how you deal with the tough crowd. Now, Alex, when we say tough, why don't we explain to everybody just what we're talking about from that perspective?
Right. What makes a tough crowd? Like sometimes you'll hear this, especially from comedians, maybe, or if you're trying to make a joke and the audience doesn't laugh, so you just say, "Whoa, that's a tough crowd." So what other elements make a tough crowd? Well, it could be, for example, and it doesn't need to be the whole crowd, but even just one person that is a rowdy individual that is talking when they shouldn't, or maybe it is like a big group in the crowd, or a lot of talking, discussions going on in the room, or sometimes it's the total opposite, right, Roger? Sometimes a very quiet audience, like so quiet you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not listening at all, or they're distracted by something else. Or, and we might touch on this if we've got time, during the Q&A session, you ask your audience if there are any questions. Someone comes to the microphone and they give their own speech. they're hijacking the Q&A session. That can happen. I've done it.
Exactly. And we want our audience, our loyal listeners, to please put in the chat if there's any questions that you may have, or if you've had situations that maybe we can touch on with regards to your experiences as speakers. We had here, hello, look at that. We've got CJ who is chiming in and talking about cell phone users as well. So thank you very much. Let's talk about all of that. So Alex, we're touching on these types of situations. Why don't we start by an example maybe of us and what we have gone through?
Right. Well, You know, my main audiences are children and youth, so including teenagers. So Rich Hopkins, who writes the toughest crowd are teenagers. Yeah, I could agree with that. And when I started storytelling to youth audiences, I started at grades 4 to 6, so around 9 to 11 years old. That was for me the easiest way to start. Maybe because my children were at that age, so I I could understand them. But I then went on to very young children, so 4 and 5 years old,
Mhm.
and the teenagers. So the teenagers, if those are the toughest crowd, why is it that they are the toughest crowd? I'd say like there are two main answers to that. First of all, um, they will let you know
Mhm.
in a subtle way if you are boring them. If they're not having a good time, if they're not enjoying what you're sharing, they will let you know either by body language or by interrupting by speaking with other people. So,
Mhm.
um, or, and this is, I guess, one of the challenges that I see most often with teenage audiences is the really quiet ones. So, as Jackie mentions, the too quiet is worse than the rowdy. That could be it. So, what do I do when it's too quiet or when they're not participating at all? Well, there are different ways, and by the way, my strategies that I use for youth audiences, most of them could be applied to uh, adult audiences, or what do you call them? Regular audiences.
Mhm.
So, for example, if they're too quiet, so maybe I'm going to ask a question, and I'm just asking, what's one experience that you've gone through that you would like to share, and nobody's raising their hand, or maybe it's just the one person in the front row that's participating, but the others are not. So in this case, it's a workshop, and I'm trying to get them to learn something by participating actively. So what
Mhm.
do I do? I start small group activities, oftentimes one-on-one. So I'll ask the same question, but instead of asking them to answer to me, I'm asking them to answer to their neighbor. So
Okay.
that's what I do, and this would be very effective also in a adult audience, even corporate audiences, where if they're too quiet, that and you want them to participate more, to be more active, have
Right.
them talk to their neighbor in an active way. Give them 5 minutes to discuss what you've just talked about, for example, and that will at least get their thought process activated.
Mhm.
Roger?
Well, I would say I agree with you with the points that you have made. I have been in many cases, in many situations, different types of crowds all around. One in particular that I can remember, and I will also add something that you said with it. But one in particular was a tech audience,
Oh,
very, very quiet,
reserved.
reserved. When I was telling jokes in my speech, you heard a little bit of a, and that's about it. But I remember a long time ago, a good friend of mine, and shout out to Neil Dunsmore. He's been on our show before, but Neil told me something, and I've never forgotten it. And this was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And he said he went into a crowd and it was the same situation where they were just very quiet. And the first thing he did was he just turned around afterwards and he just said, "You do realize these are funny jokes, right?" And all of a sudden, everybody started to laugh. And it broke the silence, so to speak, and the tension in the room. And he said, "All right, good. I see you guys can laugh, so let's do it." So the idea is sometimes to realize what's going on and then just acknowledge it. And one of the strategies that I have is called the add, and it's ADD, and it's comes down to add value to your presentations. And the A is for acknowledge. Acknowledge that there is a situation in the room. If you have someone that's very loud, or in a case of kids, they're rowdy in the back. If it's someone's phone that's constantly going off, or you see someone talking between each other through your presentation, if it is a situation that you have in the room, acknowledge it right away. Now, how do you acknowledge it? No, you're not going to be rude about it or anything like that. But what you will do is just try and find a way in which you can let them suddenly know that you see that they're not paying attention. In the case of kids, and I've spoken at high schools, there was a situation where I was speaking at an event, and there was a little group that was gathered in the back, and they were talking, not overly loud, but they were talking that I can hear them. And I said to the room, I said, you know, we're sitting here and we're all trying to acknowledge or see who we are as people. And there are going to be times when you're going to want people to recognize and see you for who you are. And I pointed out to them in the back, and you're going to want them to listen to you. And immediately they realized what I was doing, and then they got quiet. So there are ways in which you can acknowledge the crowd. The next thing is to decipher. Decipher whether or not the situation warrants you to make an issue of it. If it's just a simple thing that's happening, you might just look over and see and keep it going if it's not interfering too much with your presentation. So you have to decipher which way to go with regards to, do I act upon this or not? And then third is to decide. Make the decision on how you are going to handle what's going on. And again, just like I said with the kids, in that case, I made it subtle. Sometimes, like a phone going off, I will go up to the person and say, is that phone call for me?
Mm-hmm.
Is that for me? Because I'm talking right now, so I wanted to know if they wanted to hear what I was saying. And I'll make the joke lightly, but at the same time, they know I acknowledge and I see what happened. So that's what I say. Add value to your presentations by first acknowledging any disruptions that are happening, decipher whether or not it is something that needs or warrants you to make a major change in the atmosphere of the room, and then decide how you'll do that.
Right. I love this. And this particular step, decipher if it's necessary to act, might be overlooked by some speakers when they're on stage, because there's something going on in the room, and you think, I must act right now. I must do something. But sometimes it's something that doesn't bother anyone except the person on stage. That could happen. And in that case, maybe it's better just to ignore it.
Well, and we were talking backstage, but let's bring this up right now. In a situation where maybe you're the keynote speaker during dinner,
mm-hmm.
There are things going on all around you. The waiters are walking around. People are eating. There
is doing noise.
Making noise. There is some little conversations happening at each table. How do you handle that, Alex? How do you handle that, like in a situation like that?
Well, first of all, if you can avoid that situation before you go, that would be useful. So if you're invited to do a keynote, and you know it's going to be at dinner time or lunchtime or breakfast, you can ask, well, when I'm on stage, can we avoid having like the service go around? So no service during the talks. And that's just common courtesy, I think, for the speakers. If that's not possible, or if you are surprised by it, then I think your second D, decipher if it's necessary to act, might be very important. Because if I'm in the crowd and I've got really good dinner in front of me, I don't want to, like, I know what it's like to be on stage, so I'll try not to bother the person on stage. But at the same time, my dinner is warm. I want to eat it right now, so I'll probably make some noises by accident. So if I'm the crowd and I recognize the fact that they want to eat, then if I'm on stage, I would also want to recognize it. You've got your dinner in front of you. I know you're going to eat, but so I might not do anything at all. But if it becomes a little too bothersome, like if there is service and the servers are going across the room, Roger, why don't you share with me what you've done when that has happened?
Yeah, so I have actually been the keynote speaker. I was aware that it was going to be during the dinner portion of the evening. And what I chose to do was incorporate all of the different parts that were going on into my speech. So while I was speaking, if there was somebody, a waiter walking by with a particular meal, I would stop him and say, wait a minute, who's this for? This is too good. This is this looks like it should be on my table. In fact, you should
Yeah,
get
save
this
a piece for me.
another one. And here's what it does. Not only are you able to still entertain the audience, but now they see that, hey, this is not bothering him at all. And in fact, it's now adding to the enjoyment of the keynote speech. So I don't allow it to bother me in that way. Or I'll walk by somebody and I see that they're eating and I say, how's the meal? How's the meal? You know, I haven't eaten yet, right? You realize I didn't eat yet. So, and I'll sit there and they'll laugh and they'll enjoy the bantering between us. And then I continue on with my speech, right? But now I diffused that situation so that the audience doesn't say to me or think that, oh man, he must be getting bothered by all these people walking by him and everything like that. So this is what I always do. Try to use those types of situations to the best of your ability when you are speaking, if you are put in a situation like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I'm thinking maybe if that happens to me next time, or when that happens to me next time, I might even go off stage and walk with the servers and ask you, can I assist you? Can I help you distribute this food here? and just continue. Yeah, and just continue. I love it, like incorporating the disruptions in your talk. I think it's a good way to acknowledge what is happening. Now, we touched on some very quiet crowds, some disruptions in the audience, but not necessarily like when there are many people in the audience that can be bothersome. So I've got example from the very young children who have no idea what it means to be shy yet and to be reserved. So I'll give you an idea about that. But maybe I'll start with one little strategy that I give to when I'm with really small children.
That was a long pause, man. I just want to acknowledge that there. That was a beautiful pregnant pause.
I was just wondering, should I share this following strategy? Now, this might not work with adult audiences, but it works with very young children. So from 4 to 7 years old, maybe. They want to talk. They need to move. So if I've got a show that is more than 5 minutes, which is most shows, I know that I might lose them because they're starting to move around. They're fidgeting. They're talking to their neighbors. They're playing with whatever they've got in their hands or in someone else's hands. So I'll put the ground rules at the beginning. I'll give a little strategy. When I see they're moving a lot, as soon as I'm on stage and they know who I am and why I'm there, I'll say, okay, let's just try something here. Let me see if this works. I know when you're talking a lot, it's like the noise comes from here, it comes from there, it comes from everywhere, and it's all around the room. So let me take that noise and bottle it up. I'll take it all in my hand and I'll bring it down. So let's try this. Now, okay, now talk. And then I encourage them to talk and get that energy out. Now I'm taking it all and I say, and they stop talking. And it's like magic. So that little move that I do right from the beginning, if as I'm speaking, I'm going through my stories, if they start to be rowdy again, then I'll just do, and they stop talking. So that might not work with a corporate audience.
I wonder if we should try that at a Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Okay. I will do that next time. Next time I'm in person with a big audience, I'll try that strategy.
I want to touch on this right here, which is what we were talking about as well in the back. Rich, hello, Rich. Thanks for always chiming in the conversations. But those that are just silent and looking at you, this grimacing look, studying you almost while you're speaking, and even though you're making jokes or you're having funny moments, and they're just staring at you,
and they may be taking notes.
Deal with a crowd like that or specific people in the audience. Now, I know for me, I've had that happen. I've had situations where not necessarily the entire crowd. I did have that tech group, but we found a way to make them start to laugh and loosen up a bit. But I've had individuals who have been in an audience and they sit right at the front, the worst place, and their face is stoic and just watching you. But then afterwards, when your presentation is done, they're the ones that come up and go, "Man, loved your presentation, loved your speech. I thought it was amazing, funny." How do you deal with that? Me, I've told them, please sit in the back and study me next time. Don't
Yeah,
sit in the front.
yeah. You want the very active listeners to be in the front. Um, I'll share something that came from, I think this was Ross Mackay, who
Hmm.
won third place in the World Championship in 1995.
Yep.
As he was emceeing I think it was another contest, he said, I know, because this was a Toastmasters event. I know that you want to analyze and you're taking notes on what's happening and you want to, pretend like you're a judge. But consider this, just audience. Oh, didn't you know audience is a verb? Yes, I use audience as a verb. Just listen. And the first time he said that to me, I was probably taking notes and thinking, oh, I want to take notes on the technical elements of the speeches that I'm going to listen to. But
Hmm.
when Ross said just be an active audience member, I thought, yeah, that will probably be more enjoyable. So if you've got someone that is introducing you in this sort of audience, the very analytical audience,
Hmm.
you might ask your introducer to ask your audience to be and let go of the technical aspects and just be in the moment, just enjoy it.
Yeah. And that helps. Like obviously that would help if you come in and you are warmed up to the crowd in some way, shape, or form. I think that's also another topic for itself is those who are introducing you. But
Mm.
the other thing I wanted to touch on, Alex, and again, thank you very much to our loyal listeners for all the comments. I'm hoping that we've answered many of your questions or concerns.
We have a good crowd today.
Yeah, we did. We did, really did. But the other thing that I wanted to touch on is sometimes what about when it comes to the Q&A?
Oh,
We have the
that's a
Q sessions, right?
yeah.
At the end
You
of
know
the
what?
thing.
I'd like to. We can close on that, but before we do, I want to come back to what we were saying just before with the very small children. I gave that strategy of the that I want to try on adult audiences, but I didn't really answer the question of what do you do and how could you apply that to an adult audience. Like this is a funny way of doing it, but not
Yeah.
really practical. Now here's one thing that I do. It works with small children. It works with a lot of teenagers too if they're being a little disruptive, but it works with adults too. They don't necessarily know that they're being disruptive.
Mhm.
I go around the room. Now I do this as much as I can. I will do it anyway, even if it's not a disruptive crowd, so that I can be closer to people. But sometimes, I've been I go in their space or in their bubble. So with really small children, I might kneel in front of them, and sometimes I'll even take their hand, and then they immediately, these young children, they look up, and I can see that they're actively listening. With
Right.
with older crowds, I won't necessarily go touch them literally, but I might just go sit next to them. And if I've got
Yep.
a good microphone, everybody can hear me anyway. And
Right.
just being in the room lets everybody know that, it's like you said, acknowledge the situation. People are all around the room, and it's important for them to be included so that
Mhm.
they don't feel the need to talk to other people.
Yeah, for sure. And you've seen me do that many times when I'm speaking. I'll walk through the
Hmm.
audience, talk, still do my speech, and then something might catch my eye that someone's doing, and I might go over and speak to them or say something or again acknowledge it in that moment. Because number one, Alex, and for all the listeners here, number one, it makes you more personable. Keep that in mind because now the audience doesn't see you sitting on a pulpit up at the top talking down to them. You're coming into the audience if you have the
Right.
opportunity. If you have the opportunity, and Rich, I'd even ask if you could chime in on this at times, even if you can or can't. If you have the opportunity to be within the audience, it feels like it's more what's the word I'm looking for? Not comfortable wasn't the word I was looking for. Uh,
Personal.
we'll say personable for now, but you're within them, so they feel like they're right there with you. And if there's something going on in the midst of the conversation, you can address it right there
Yeah.
instead of being sitting up on top all the time. I connected. Thank you very much, Jackie. That's the word I was looking for. Connected. That's what it is. You feel more connected with them and they feel connected to you. So I think it's important that we understand that sometimes if you get the opportunity not to be up on a stage and you have the ability to move within the crowd, that
Yeah.
helps.
Now, here's a really interesting question
Good.
on
Yes.
from CJ. What if you're in a wheelchair? It's much harder to navigate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, you might be able to ask the organizers, the event
Yeah.
organizer, to make the stage accessible from more than one spot, so that you can go down to the crowd
Yeah.
more easily, one way or another, and make sure that there's enough space between the tables, if they are tables, so that you can also navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. That would probably be the best way. And even Rich chimed in here and said, he misses those days. There
We're
you
both clicking on the comment at once.
go. Yeah, that he misses the days that he could walk in the crowd because it's such a good feeling to be there within them and seeing their reactions right there in front of you. You may not go out like Alex and touch anybody, but as he said at the time, you can walk right up to them and look them right in the eye and stuff like that. So if you can physically, if you can do it, try and do that when you're a speaker.
Yeah. You spoke on Q&A. We'll have to end on this, but you'll understand why we don't want to end on it at the same time. If we've got a question and answer period and one person comes and instead of asking a question, starts their own presentation or starts their own speech, and it goes on and on, at what point do you interrupt them, or do you ask them to stop it? How do you do it so that you don't sound mean and keep the audience on your side, especially considering this is usually close to the end of your presentation?
Yeah, a lot of times what you want to do, or I've done, is I try my hardest. Number one, I never end, and this is key to anyone who has never heard this before. Do not end your presentation on a Q&A. Make sure that you have the last word when it's all said and done. So in other words, as an example, you are wrapping up your speech, you say, okay, right now I will take a question and answer period. And then when that is done, I am going to wrap it up quickly.
Yeah.
That way, the last words that the audience hears is from you. All right. You do not want to end it on a Q&A. And if you have a situation where somebody hijacks the Q&A session by almost giving a speech, sometimes you have to stop them in mid-stride and say, whoa, 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 I didn't know we were in an international speech contest. I didn't realize we were having a speech contest here. Just to kind of, again, make it humorous, but to acknowledge that the person is taking over, and then maybe ask them, maybe, is it that you're trying to ask this?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's that they can't formulate what it is that they want to say. And Alex, you said that to me in the back. Sometimes they just can't formulate their thoughts, so they run along trying to get there. So you have to pull them in.
Yeah. Kathy has a good way of saying it too. I love your thoughts. Now, what was the question?
Yeah. There you go.
And depending on what is the event and who is controlling the microphones, you might ask the organizers to give a time limit for the questions, and maybe it's someone else who comes and interrupts the impromptu speaker, so that you don't have to look like the bad guy.
Right. I'm just going through some of these comments right now, and I'm sure that a lot of people have had to deal with this. Even when the venue forces you to have a Q&A at the end, you can at least use table topics or use it as table topic skills to bridge it to your final question. Yes, definitely.
Right. And you can be clear. Okay, like you should know how much time you've got left before you need to turn it over to someone else. So if you see that this is the last question, you can already say it. Okay, thank you for your question. Now, if there are other questions, I'll stay after to answer all of your questions. I'll be here. But this is the last question. Answer the question, and well, even before you answer the question, you can say something like what you did, Roger. Like, this is the last question, and after that, I'm going to close it up. So that you do have the last words.
Well, we have gone 30 minutes, and we could have even gone even longer, but we have to close off at this point. I hope that we helped many of you with your presentations next time you get on a stage and have to deal with a tough crowd. It may not be tough. It might be a good crowd. They're just not what you're used to. And at that point in time, learn to adjust. Add value to your presentations at all times. Remember, acknowledge, decipher, decide. Alex, it's been a great evening or great day for conversation. As we always say, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find great combos. Please keep the conversations going.
You've been a great crowd. Thank you so much. Have a great week.